Today's topic is one of the most interesting right now at present. Cybersecurity in pharmaceutical industry. Probably we all consume pills. For us, it's just a moment that we consume our pill. But the process behind that manufacturing of that pill is humongous. It takes years and years of hard work and approvals for getting that particular pill on in market. Today we are going to discuss why cybersecurity is an important topic in pharma industry. With increased digitalization, you have multiple partners to bank on. Probably a pharmaceutical company which is marketing this particular drug, they will have to rely on a particular research company who does the research. They will have to rely on someone who does the manufacturing part. They will have to rely on someone who does the distribution part. So there are a lot of moving bits in this particular entire value chain. Okay. Yeah. So can I request to introduce yourself very quickly and then just answer this question. So what are the most pressing cybersecurity threats currently faced by pharmaceutical industry? And follow-up question to that is, what strategies are being employed to mitigate this particular risk? Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me here. And आप सभी लोगों को बहुत बहुत नमस्कार. So my name is Jitendra Mishra, and I am a group CIO in Accoms Drugs and Pharmaceutical. I don't know how many of you are aware about this company. This is the largest CDMO, contract drug manufacturing, not only in India but Asia. So what you consume is definitely some of the medicine is getting manufactured in our plant. Talking about the customer, right from your MNCs to the smallest company of this country, we do manufacturing. We have around 14 plants, and some of my colleagues are also here. So thank you for being here. I was not aware, but it's good to have you here from the business representation side. And coming to your point that about the cybersecurity in the current, so it's not the current actually. If you look into that, the trend what we have experienced actually is starting from the COVID time, and that has taken such a larger footprint that has become now at that time even as a talk of the boardroom, something which is the most pressing subject in the boardroom, and still it is a pressing subject. And so why pharma actually? If you look into that, why pharma? Why pharma is so darling for the hackers? Because if you look into that, it's darling because of some situation and some things which is very special for us. Something which we talk about that the whole supply chain network, if you look into that, the big cycle as you talked about. So that's the opportunity right from novel drug discovery to the customer who is a consumer. So our responsibility becomes for compliance perspective, from customer perspective, from patient perspective. When we talk about this whole cycle, it also comes into that the human clinical trials, our intellectual properties, our data which is very, very sensitive. Now, if we are compromising any particular line or any particular point, I mean, it's like that we are nowhere in the business because it's a trust which we have with our patient, with our customers. So trust is something which is the most important. That is what a new buzz has come as zero trust, right? So some of the point what I would like to touch upon is that in this journey, when we actually experiencing from COVID point, then right from the onboarding, not only from the human perspective, but any device perspective, when we do the onboarding of any machines or any device, there is a very robust and a process how you onboard. Because if you look into that, in this digitally connected ecosystem, everything is connected. The way the socialization of the machines are being there in our manufacturing plant, and so-called we talk about a smart plant, smart manufacturing. So who makes this smart? is that something which we talk about the IT/OT conversion? When we talk about the IT/OT conversion or we talk about the smart connected devices, so there is a threat also involved. And that what we do in our environment is that the complete risk assessment, risk enabling system as how vulnerability is being addressed. There is a proper checklist, not only from the application or a network perspective, because we are talking about the network application data center since long. So there are new emerging technologies which is actually bothering us, especially in this current context as a generative AI. Right. So in our standpoint of view, we do the risk assessment. We have got our consultant, we have got a CISO who actually manage, and it is the daily discussion. First opening of the morning, we have every day 30-40 minutes with my CISO, with my security managers, and where we stand today and what the ongoing projects are doing and what is the futuristic plan to address such emerging trends and emerging risk for us. Because something which is we are responsible for our investors, responsible for our customers, that's the most pressing for us. And without that, I will say that we can't survive. Something like that. So with that, this I will hand over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jitendra ji. So, few key takes away from what you said. I really liked you said darling of hackers. Probably they know if you catch hold of a pharmaceutical company, you can catch hold of government also, because there is a lot dependency on pharmaceutical industry or medical fraternity. So yes, very well said. Again, you said about smart manufacturing. That's one of the area where India has already evolved very well. So moving on, Dheeraj, to you. Yeah. So you are a part of one of the pioneer in Indian pharmaceutical industry. So what's your view? How do you see Indian pharmaceutical companies, especially yours, enhance your cybersecurity postures by implementing advanced framework technologies? Can you give us some example around it?
My name is Dheeraj Sinha. I'm from Sun Pharma. So I've recently joined Pharma, so I have a very good view in terms of where we stand from a overall perspective. So I come from steel, cement, port, paint, defense, EV, that manufacturing background. And as an industry, I think pharma lags behind in terms of automation. And you talk of any pharma industry, etc., there are only sporadic instances of digitization that have been done. The connection of OT, IT, while everyone talks about it, I think as an industry, and it's not related to any particular company, I think there is a lag, severe lag, that we need to possibly address. And there are lots of challenges that we have. Our hands also get tied because of the regulatory environment, and anything that you want to change has to go through 2027 processes to be able to certify, QAIT does a review, etc., before you get into it. So the agility in the pharma industry typically takes a backseat. And that is what I think we need to address as an industry and as a leader in the pharma. That's our job, to ensure that we bring agility back in the IT infrastructure, in the services, in the applications that we deploy. The challenges, as is being said, are many. The entire value chain comprises of mostly external third-party contract vendors, suppliers, you have your customers, etc., and then you have drug discovery, clinical trials, etc. There's a huge amount of intellectual property that we carry, and there's a huge amount of sensitive information, patient, client, etc., sensitive information that we carry, and then hence we may be an appropriate target as far as the not so good category of people are concerned. Now, the job that we have in front of us is very, very clear. We need to ensure that we enhance digitization. We need to ensure that we get to connected factories. While it's easier to say connected factories, I think it's a challenge and a job that we need to do to be able to get to connected factories. The moment you get to connected factories, it opens up its own set of challenges and issues in terms of. So there are multiple, and coming from an industry which is completely dependent on digitization, because coming from steel industry, it's a 7-kilometer long plant and you start from raw material and it's a continuous manufacturing. Out after 7 kilometers comes a coil. So everything is automated, everything is guided, and everything is controlled from an OT point of view. So our understanding of the domain in terms of how do we connect and how do we get there is pretty significant. But having an understanding and going ahead and doing the implementation in a GXP environment is pretty challenging. And I think there is a lot of work that's currently being done in at least in our company to be able to resolve. So there is a lot of roadmaps, etc., that are there to be able to help solve. What we need to critically protect is our crown jewels. Our crown jewel is our identity management. The 90% of the threat vectors come from your Active Directory and the ability to breach the Active Directory, do an privilege escalation, and then do a group policy deployment, which does an encryption or whatever. So as long as we understand what the threat vectors, how do they operate, and how is it that you can protect, I think it should be not a fairly simple, but it should be not be a very complicated thing to be able to put the infrastructure in place to be able to protect to the extent that you can. And then there are solutions in terms of how do you get it to business resiliency, etc., in case if you get hacked. So I think there are multiple solutions, and possibly we can have a discussion in terms of how do we go about doing this. And I hope
Sure.
I have answered the question.
Yeah, sure. So just taking a bit from what you said, I think yes, the need of the hour is to enhance digitization in a way, but what really hurts the industry is you have multiple geographies to cater. If you are catering to a US market, you have a better price point to manage. If you are catering to local market, you have a different price point to manage. You have a different regulator looking from different lens. So that's one hurdle. If you look into some selected plants which are catering to some regulated market, they are absolutely top of the town. If you look at to some selected the generic manufacturer, that's where there is some area or room of work to be done, is broadly what I feel.
No, so I think we have 41 plants globally. 33, 34 of the plants are in India, and the rest of them are in various geographies across. There is certain plants which are FDA facing, there are certain plants which are Australia Health, Canada Health, UK Health, etc. So regulatory environment is everywhere, though the kind of stringencies possibly differ from market to market. When you pick up plants, and for example, if you are picking up plants for, as we call a Industry 4.0 digital factory, obviously we need to make a choice in terms of which factories. I can't do 41 factories in one shot. I will retire by the time 41 factories will happen, because it takes time to be able to do one factory, because it's not only about paperless manufacturing. It is about Industry 4.0, which means you need to have an AR, VR, you need to have predictive analytics, you need to get in. So there is a lot of things in the frame that go in terms of doing it. So when you pick up, obviously you pick up so there is a criteria on the basis of which we pick up. So one is obviously the simplest to do, less complexity, ability to do it quicker. That's step number one. Obviously then there is an EBITDA margin, etc., and the kind of impact that I can have if I do that plant digitization. Because there are a lot of observations, FDA, etc., that come in, which leads to cost of compliance becomes very high. So how do you, if you get into some sort of an industrial digitalization, then possibly you'll also decrease the cost of compliance. So what is that cost of compliance vis-a-vis the cost of investments that you need to do? And there is a very rigorous matrix that we have developed to be able to understand and identify which plants and how to go about doing them. That has the work that has already happened, and I think we are fairly good in terms of identifying.
Yes.
And it is not only FDA facing, but against the criteria, how good are the equipments in terms of connectivity? How old is the age of the equipment? So the readiness of the plant to be able to also adopt technologies. And please understand that any digital innovation that you do in a factory is only 20% digital. 50 to 60% is cultural change, training, etc., that needs to happen. It is very, very significant we only think digital innovation technology laga denge and we will be able to reach there. It is 60% cultural change, 20% technology, and another 20-30% whatever is in terms of training and adoption. So with that lens is how we are preparing ourselves for the future.
Great, great. So moving on, Etzel, we were discussing you cannot stop attacks. So what's your strategy? With these days attacks becoming more and more sophisticated, how do you try and ensure that the loss is minimal?
Hey, good afternoon. Etzel Pararaya from Glenmark Pharma. So I'll speak a little bit on terms of the background. I know Jitendra as well as Deepak Dhira has already covered. I mean, the industry that we are coming in is basically patient safety is what is our norm. I mean, we are there because of all of you all. Some point of time, you would be consuming a drug of Glenmark or Sun or Acoms or anyone. And the importance of business continuity is very paramount. Can we avoid these attacks? I would say no. Can we be better prepared? Is what we have to do. Now, am I ready to understand what are the various impacts? And I'll never forget 19 July 2024. We were luckily not impacted, but the modus operandi is going on changing. I think we have to understand the hackers or the vulnerabilities are way ahead to whatever solutions are there in the market today. And if you will study each of these attacks today has got a very different modus operandi. They are not repeated. Then the highest amount of technology adoption, I would say, is in that industry. And the highest, I would say, intelligence and innovation is there. If we could get that kind of innovation in our pharma drug development, I think the industry would be in a better place to serve mankind. But given that, I think the training awareness is very important. And today we think, identity and access management, and we give the least important to our Active Directory solution. We will test an application, we will say CSV. And just one background, one of my colleagues mentioned, the industry is moving from CSV to CSA. Predominantly, the reason why pharma has been a laggard, if someone would say, in this digital adoption or automation, it's not only about the regulations and compliance. It's each region, each country has come out with different regulations. And even if I say, okay, I have a US FDA manufacturing plant, within the same plant, I'm also serving even Europe. And Europe is not one country. It's, I would say, 30 odd countries. There are different regulations. And there isn't 1 year where I've seen there is no regulation changes or new compliances coming in. So I would say definitely awareness. And awareness is not only to the IT teams and all, it has to be across the organization. And if someone thinks, okay, I will give it to a consulting company, they will go and drive the change. I think we have to drive our own change. You can't outsource that, or you can't, give it to somebody else. The technology solutions are going to evolve. And it's what use cases that we in our industry or users are going to give is where the technology will evolve. OEM or a product company cannot think of all use cases. And if you see, the best application systems are built where the highest amount of digital adoption has happened over 20 odd years. Even to build a product, I always ask the company, what's your evolution? Which maturity of the curve do you see your organization? And if someone says, no, we are mature in 3 years, I think then he doesn't know what he's speaking. And there's one industry which I've seen which is extremely volatile, is our security area. Ever changing, ever dynamic, and there's never a day we can say today is quiet. I hope I did some justice.
No, definitely. So can you just briefly explain on what are the strategies that you have implemented to ensure that there is a right balance between operational demands of this global network?
See, with the digital and the automation journey that we have, started. First of all, I wouldn't say digital is equal to automation or automation equal to digital. And each of them are having their own, I would say, requirements from a business perspective. Each of them have their own constraints. And along with that comes amount of disruption and challenges to us. And I'll go back to whatever policies we brought out. We've taken some industry best practices, some use cases, what we've experienced. And that it cannot be frozen. It has to be kept on evolving. And it has to be a continuous learning. And with this aspect, what are the various front-facing applications we've had? What kind of VAPT we are doing? And some of the extent we have to also work with our partners closely. And the reason why I say it, sometimes they're not very open to share what vulnerabilities they have. So if I do not know what are my deficiencies, I do not know what to fix. It's like I can't go to the doctor, sit down and just look at him and smile, right? He's not going to know what is my pain. He's not an astrologer. I know you have an astrologer out here. So the point is that what is it that I want to solve? And how open are those OEMs today to tell me what all has happened? And if we don't know really what is the impacts that we have, what vulnerabilities we are sitting on, we can't address. And I think the trainings within our team, the responses that we have, attentiveness, and the constant, I would say the kind of always ready to learn, that hunger to learn is important. And the passion that you have to whatever job you do. I think that's what drives an organization and that's what builds brands for us, right?
Got it. Sure. So taking that particular thoughts that the scenario is evolving, Rahul, according to you, what advancement in cybersecurity framework have been most beneficial for pharmaceutical industry? You can share your personal experience as well.
Yeah. So myself, Rahul Burse. I'm part of 4 billion RPG group, and I'm heading life sciences business of RPG group. Rishabh, answer to your question, if you coming to the question, cybersecurity is all about the people, process, and technology, right? And considering recent, incidents of attacks and cybersecurity threats, I would say elephant into the room. And so my question is just a little bit technical. So I will be going little bit of technical. So what an advancement we can do into the pharmaceutical industry? So I would say not advancement. It should be a proactiveness to be there in any industry. I would say pharma or non-pharma. So if I take it the example, as I mentioned, cybersecurity is all about the people, process, and technology. If we put the robust process and good technology, but your people is get compromised. Your password, for example, from the user to the administrator get compromised, then your cybersecurity is in toss, right? So research service says that of every threat and every incident or cybersecurity risk is from the people, right? To avoid this, we should have a robust cybersecurity resilience and cybersecurity posture has to be there. So starting with technically, I would say we should have a proper, zero trust based mechanism where you cannot believe on, you cannot sharing the things or the data. So for any data, we should have a zero trust mechanism, right? So there are a lot of OEMs or there are a lot of things in market where you can put into for the zero trust. Secondly, I would say there should be a strong SIEM and SOC in place, right? Until and unless you have a strong SIEM or event management tool or SOC, you cannot monitor your cyber security posture of the organization. So these are the things. So you should have a proper trust mechanism, and yes, most importantly for the pharmaceutical, data encryption, right? So pharmaceutical is having a data from the clinical trials to the supply chain. So proper data encryption has to be there, and I think so. We should work on this. As per my point of view, first is you should have a proper SOC, SIM, and zero trust. And then you can mention the proper continuously red teaming, VAPT kind of things. These are the things I would say advancement, or I would say proactive steps towards the saving the organization's cybersecurity posture. So
Sure,
that's it from side. And additionally, my colleagues already mentioned continuous training, VAPT assessment periodically will save the added advantage.
So one quick question for anyone, we can start. So there was a survey conducted by a leading consulting firm and the survey was about how are we geared up for this cybersecurity investment by various companies. So 84% of professionals said they feel that yes, it is a need of the hour. However, they are not invested the way they should have invested. So do you feel the same, that yes, the need of the hour is to invest heavily? Are we, if yes, are we there as per your experience? So anyone can take it.
So let me start. So I think that the word has moved. We talked about VA, now we're talking about continuous breach assessment. So anything that you do on a VAPT that you used to do periodically, it is moving to continuously checking for all the vulnerabilities, and it gets its intelligence from the cloud and various providers who give that intelligence to be able to understand where the breaches are and if we are susceptible, so that we can plug. The red teaming was a concept. It will continue to be there, but it's also being substituted by technologies like this. We talked about zero trust. I think zero trust as a framework, the Department of Defense has 26 levers for doing a zero trust. We touch only 6-7 levers currently to be able to say that we are zero trust. So I think if we go into deep to understand as to what zero trust means and how do we work on this, I think there's a significant amount of work that all industries, and we are not talking pharma per se, but including pharma, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to be able to establish zero trust. From a technology point of view, in terms of investment and the question that was raised, I think we will always demand for more value to come in, because there is no single window or a single solution to be able to solve. Every year, every 6 months, you will go back to the board or the management and ask for certain more things, because you need to cover now this, you need to cover now that, and so on and so forth. Since it's a board agenda for a long time now, I think there are tools and technologies which needs to be adopted, and I don't see a reason, or in my experience, that as long as you are able to put in a story correctly and possibly be able to convince, money is not an issue. The issue is in terms of the efficacy of the solution that you are deploying, because they always fall short, because you always have someone who is much more intelligent than the solution that you have deployed. So it's not about the budget, but it's about our capability. The people who deployed, half of the times the configuration that we do on the solutions that we are deploying are not very efficient, because we take an easy route out. We do not want to confront the users, businesses, etc. Ye VIP user, isko ye cheez de, etc. etc. So I think it's all about us and our ability to be able to configure and convince and get the story right. I don't think money has ever been a constraint in my case.
I think Dheeraj has touched upon a very important point. Budget is not a constant, but how you prioritize your budget. That is something most important, because there is a budget, funding, and then how you prioritize your budget into that, the threat landscape. That's something which is most important, because it is all on us that how you do the risk threat intelligence assessment and how you put your money into that direction. This is something which is the most important, because it's never ending. But since you know what is the most risk threat for you, so you have to allocate the budget into the right direction so that you can mitigate your risk threat and landscape smartly. So that's something which is most important for allocating the budget to the right direction for the threat risk.
Sure.
So I'll add something here. So one thing social media has done and our internet friend has done is they made this awareness on cybersecurity breaches and attacks easier for our job. Today, in every second quarter, we have to report to the board risk, impacts, vulnerabilities. I have to sign a report and submit to stock exchange. Have there been any breaches? I have to submit to any of the regulator agencies in 72 hours any breaches. This has actually made the job easier. Everybody understands what's going to be the impact of business content. Nobody wants to take a risk. And no board says, you know what, I don't care about business content. Everybody cares. So the funding, I don't think is a point. Now, are we putting the funds in the right place? I think that's the question that I don't think we also have a proper answer. And it goes back to the earlier point is, do I really know which areas are vulnerable? And do we know all the possible modus operandis of the hackers or the opposite party? That's ever changing, right? And that's the point where even though you do, however much you do is not enough. Your agility, your response time, your drills. Basically, you need to do the drill to know, okay, which areas I am vulnerable. Is everybody geared up to know what is his role? Or will he come under stress and buckle under stress? And the drill can never be equal to the real event, right? So that is one thing I think which I've seen. But I think the regulations and the privacy also is going to come in now, and which will also put additional pressure. Today, many of the companies that we are selling drugs to, especially in Europe and US, the tenders, they're asking us to give a copy of the cybersecurity insurance. So 3 years back, nobody would talk about cybersecurity insurance, right? Of course, each year when we renew, the premium is only rising. It's rising because the events are increasing, right? Probably the claims are going pretty high to the insurance providers. So this is going to be the framework we have to work in. With more digital, more automation, this is only going to increase. Now, who's driving that? Who's funding them? I don't want to get into that. Because definitely that is it's not some mom and pop pill shop running that. They are just like enterprises, how we run. I think they are much more sophisticated running.
Got it.
So, additionally, getting the fund is not a problem, Rishabh. But the problem with the cybersecurity solution is that they are all point solution, right? So when you go for the board or only for the budget, so looking into this, how many kitne applications आप कितने डालना चाहते हो? Because each and every is having their own setup and own. So consolidation and optimization of cybersecurity solution is has to be there, and that is a main constraint. So for a technology guy as well as to and board to getting the approval is a concern. Otherwise, people are ready to give the fund. That's my.
Interesting. So, just imagine we are sitting in front of the board. Any broad two recommendation that you would want to give to your board right now? Brief pointers. Any brief pointers?
Keep funding. That is what we require.
I think they just want to have an assurance that things are in the right place. I think that's the only thing which the board wants to hear.
So, I think there are 3 levers against which we play. The first is and there are multiple scorecards that are available, which are honeypots all across to be able to identify bit site, etc. There are multiple scores that are available to give you your posture scorecard. Then there's an internal scorecard that you have, which is again, there are very many frameworks that are available. So you have an external view of your security posture, you have an internal view of your security posture. And then today when we compare, we don't compare it against the pharma. The tools also give you the comparison. So for example, we compare it against BFSI, the HDFCs, the ICICIs, the RBIs of the world. How does that tool give their score? And it's a very objective score. It tells you on a score of 300 to 900, where is your security posture? And there are a lot of headers, etc. that they have. If you go and browse the web, it tells you that you are on an outdated OS or your browser is outdated or whatever, etc. So it is a very scientific way. In fact, cybersecurity insurers use these scores to be able to understand what your posture is. So when we take it to the board, we always give a representation of this is what I scored last quarter was, this is where we are. And we think we are continuously improving or the other day, whatever be the situation. Now, that for me is a story which is very consistent because it is objectified, there is a trend line for you to be able to show. And against that, when you go back and ask for something, I think it becomes much clearer and for us much easier to be able to get those funding that we need.
So, do we have time for opening the floor for questions? One more. So, audience, any questions from your end? Or else I have one last question. And
Do we have any questions from the audience for our panelists? So you can go forward.
So, just a quick view from all of you, maybe. Any best SOP that you would want to share with audience?
Too many of them.
Just a couple of them. Top two.
No, I will just give you a very short and sweet answer. I think the framework for ISO 27001 will give everything to you. If you are really bothered about your security and all, you have to just go through that and understand. And as rightly said, it's 100 of SOPs, policies, procedures. It's very difficult to say. Even smallest acceptable use of IT resources looks like so simple, but has a huge impact. So every SOP policies has got a different direction and different impact. But ISO is a framework which everyone can go through that and can find out everything is written very clear and loud.
Got it.
I have 2 points to give as a takeaway. So whichever the security partner executing your operations or your projects or monitoring, don't use him to audit. Auditor should be different from the executor. That's point one. The other aspect which I've seen is in terms of areas that are operating. What was good yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be good forever. So don't depend on one single security solution. Have a plethora of solutions. If one fails, at least the other can step in.
Especially it becomes very difficult because you are dealing with multiple partners, different
And-
stakeholders.
See, Rishabh, also don't forget, each of these security solutions are very point solutions. There's no one solution meeting all. And I don't want to take any names here.
Right.
And it's better. And if there's an overlapping security solution, even better. Because don't forget, whatever training you give people, whether within the IT team, within business teams, external vendors, customers, nobody can control human behavior. Nobody. Nor you can predict human behavior.
Absolutely.
And the biggest disruption today is happening because of human behavior. You can train people, you can retrain, you can de-learn, relearn. But human behavior, there is no tool to predict in which situation he'll react and do what.
Got it.
So, Rishabh, as Dheeraj mentioned, there are a lot of SOPs, policies, and framework in place. But we do really following the same or not? Which is written everything, right? Take the example of CrowdStrike. So DR in place in every written in every SOP, every policy is there, right? But after, if you take the example of CrowdStrike, does anyone follow the DR? That CrowdStrike happened, everybody call IT. मेरा ये हो गया, ये problem, मेरा machine नहीं चल रहा है, and everything calling IT. But whether they checked with they are in place, if machine is not running, so what things needs to be followed. So you have policies, framework. Only thing need to be followed properly. Whether it's the ISO, it's a policy, IT policy, or SOPs you mentioned and take the names. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we need to quantify, and any solution, any posture, anything that you deploy, there is magic in quantifying, because quantification gives you the base to ask for more. It is also a reflection of where you are. It's an internal safety that you feel when you look at it and you look at postures and so on. So whether it's pick up anything, whether you pick up identity, you pick up data at motion, rest, whatever. The art is to be able to quantify, and then your story has to be on quantified data and trends. If you are able to crack this, that's one advice of mine. The second is there are too many dashboards that backup ka alag hai, iska alag hai, patch management, etc. There is no tool currently that would translate the ISO 27000, the HIPAA, the GMP compliances, etc. that we need to do. Create a checklist matrix out of it, and then your ability to only report exceptions. For example, backup needs to be done once a day for these systems, once every 3 hours for these systems, and so on and so forth. So it's all written, it's all being done. Exceptions, if any, needs to come to the surface. Today, if I want to review my CISO, etc., I need to spend 3 to 4 hours if I really want to do it well, not on a cursory level. Sab theek chal raha hai ki nahi. If I really want to get in and do it, it takes me 3 to 4 hours to be able to get into each of those dashboards, understand what is happening, what is not happening. If there was a method for me to get exceptions, I get audited every other day. Some or the other company or some or the other auditor continues to put audits on us. So, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy from IT side as well to be able to face these audits. So, a solution, and we are attempting to find one where I put in all my policies, procedures, checklists there. Lot of tools do all that they need to do. Exceptions, if any, get reported onto that central console. And if I can get a compliance reporting out of it for various things, my backup, my patch management, my outdated security, my vulnerabilities, etc., etc. If I can get a posture score, which is an internally generated score, which says 10%, 90%, 90, whatever percentage, then that improvement, if I can show it over a period of time, that's, I think, wins the battle as far as funding, trust of the management, trust of the board is concerned. I think that are the two things that
Wonderful. So key takeaway that I'm taking from this particular session is pharma being darling of hackers. From quantification, you cannot manage human behavior. It's evolving. Hackers are evolving. You have to evolve better than them. And probably zero trust that Rahul you highlighted, and proactiveness. So a wonderful session. Just one last concluding thought from myself. We always discussed who is the right representation in management. Probably a CEO. Erstwhile, we used to discuss finance team. For a person from finance origin is the best to take forward the baton of CEO. Then we started discussing slowly, steadily, a person from marketing and commercial being best eligible for taking up the baton. Now it's the time, according to me, that a cybersecurity, IT person, we will hear very soon that a IT person, or probably we are already hearing a lot of noise that a true leader is coming from a different background, not the erstwhile background. So with this thought, I would conclude the discussion. Thank you, everyone.